Hey there, Blazer fans, and welcome to episode 19 of The Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today I have a very special guest, one of the first greats of the UAB football program, Mr. Cedrick Buchannon. Cedrick and I had a lot of fun in the recording, so I can't wait to share it with you guys. But be sure to stick around until the end for some very special birthday shout-outs for this week in Blazer history. Enjoy the episode. All right, Blazer fans, I've got my guest here for episode 19 of The Dragon's Den. A former football wide receiver, a little bit of corner, kick returner, and punt returner, Mr. Cedrick Buchannon. Cedrick, how you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing amazing. Feel great.
That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely glad to have you on. I know it's been a while since we had you on the gridiron, but it's definitely nice to have one of the pioneers of UAB football on, and I can't wait to ask you some of these questions and get to know you a little bit better and kind of refamiliarize you with my audience.
Hey, man, like I said, I thank you for this podcast, and it's something that we've been needing, and just to get people familiar with, who's, actually recording and talking to some of the guys, so it'll be shared amongst everybody.
So you played for UAB from 1992 to 1995. Like I mentioned, you played wide receiver. You played a little bit of corner. You told me just before we started recording, and you played kick returner and punt returner. And then you went on to play for the Birmingham Steeldogs from 2000 to 2003. You're from Auburn, Alabama. You went to Auburn High School. Is that correct?
Of course.
Yeah. So coming out of high school, we don't have very much going back onto like 24/7 or huddle and all these things, so I couldn't really tell like who was recruiting you out of high school. So were there any teams looking at you coming out of high school, and what ultimately made you choose UAB that was in their first years of football?
So let me say this, I really didn't look at any schools for football. I wanted to do track. A lot of people that went to Auburn High know I was one of the very first state place pole vaulter. My coach, I did football. My football team had a lot of good talent on there. We went 10-2 my senior year. And I don't know how many guys off that team that got offers, but I actually wanted to do pole vaulting. And so UAB was starting a track team that same year, 1991, with Phil Shinks. I think his name is Phil Shinks. He was the first track coach at UAB. And so that was kind of led me to Birmingham.
So you get to UAB and you play under the program's first head coach, Coach Jim Hilyer. What was it like playing for Coach Jim Hilyer?
Man, he was tough, man. He was he didn't even, I can remember clearly, he never knew my name the first, matter of fact, I don't think he knew my name the first 2 years. He was just hard. He was prompt. Once you cross that line, it's all business, man. We only had a couple times where, I actually saw him smile. That was at the Mississippi Valley State game, and he smiled that game. But very few times I ever seen him smile. But he's all work, man, no play.
Okay. So your first year, you make an immediate impact with 21 punt returns. That's the seventh most in a single season in UAB history. You had 276 punt return yards. That's fourth most in UAB history. You had 145 kickoff return yards versus Samford. That's tied for the 10th most. And you had a huge game against Lindenwood with 118 punt return yards. And one of those was an 83-yard punt return touchdown, which is the longest in school history. What do you remember about your first season at UAB?
So let me say this: those games that when I started returning the ball, it was more of athletic. I didn't really know how to read lanes, and they always tell you let the first guy go and let the punt returner get past him. And once you get past him, those lanes kind of develop, but you have to kind of because after teams see what you do, they gonna kind of either pin you in or not kick it to you. So then you have to start setting up after that. So it's a developmental thing. So the first year was just all athletic. I just read the blocks, the guys like Mike Colson and some of the other guys that was on those punt return teams. They set it all up. I mean, all I could do was just split the first two and boom, that was it.
Okay. So your sophomore year, 1993, UAB moved up to the Division III level, to the moved up from the Division III level to the 1AA level, and had its highest win total that wouldn't be broken until 2018, when you guys had 9 wins. What was your sophomore season like?
Man, it was phenomenal. We had all those coaches we had. Some of the names I'm gonna throw out there, they all played in the NFL, and I think one of them is Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. Okay, you got Coach Dieter Brock, Canada. He broke all the records. He went to Jacksonville State from Auburn University. Then you got Mike McClung, Reese McCall, Fred Bohannon. You talking about Pittsburgh Steelers? All that whole staff pretty much they had already went through their rookie mistakes, and they kind of like came together the second year. And so I think that what made that season so special, because by them having Doc Hilyer having so many close relations with the city of Birmingham, we were able to get access to Legion Field. We was able to get access to the Birmingham Fire, old equipment, all that equipment that we use at UAB. Scotty McCallum and Dr. Jim Hilyer, they worked out a deal where they could let us use the leftover equipment from those teams. So putting that together with the experience of those coaches, having year one under their belt, it made it work out so much wonderful. So kudos, those connections and the people that was there.
Okay. So
Smoking Hodge, I forgot to tell you, Smoking Hodge was on that staff. Then you got Sammy Queen. I think he was the only guy that was from Georgia that didn't play football, but he was a baseball guy. But he was the young guy that helped bridge us to the coaches, because I think Coach Queen was like 29 or 30. He was very young at that time. So,
okay. So you guys in your junior year, you guys had a rough 1-4 start, but you finished the season winning 5 of your last 6. Your role at UAB expanded that year to include more receiving along with your returns. And in the season finale, you and your teammate Derek Ingram lit up Prairie View A&M when both of you had over 100 yards receiving. Derek had 289 yards and 4 touchdowns, and you had 129 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. And so what was it like to end your junior season, not only as a team on a high note, but also on a personal high note?
I really think that UAB offensive linemen were really, really good those last 2 years. I mean, my sophomore year, my junior year, because we threw the ball to set up the run. I mean, we was a heavy pass offensive team, but we still had Pat Green, who just until this past year had his touchdown record broke by Spencer Brown, so he used to go. So, I mean, Derek Ingram, he kind of led us, when you heavy favorite that guy, that just left me one-on-one on the outside. So, I'm a shorter guy. I've always thought that I was open, especially on the wide side of the field. I'm always open. But you know how receivers are, they're always open. But So I just thought that, UAB offensive line was very strong. I mean, John never got sacked. I don't even know what's his sack record or what. How many sacks he had, but he's got to be close to for the amount of snaps he got. He's got to be close. But he was very good with the ball. He had a great touch. Plus, like I said, he's 6'4". He could see very well. The guy had. He's the son of a coach. So, kudos to him.
So going into your senior year in 1995, you guys didn't start off on a great note again. You went 0-5 to start the year, but you did manage to win. Actually, correction on the last question, you guys won your final six to end the year, but in your senior year, that's when you managed to win 5 of the last 6 games. But that included a big milestone win in the program's growth with a 19-14 win over North Texas. That was the first win over a 1A school in UAB's history. What do you remember from that game?
Man, I remember going out to Denton. It was hot. It was real hot. The field was so hot, they actually put hoses on the turf. So I don't know, we're trying to cool it off, but it actually made it hotter. So when we went out there, Coach Brown, he finally called a pretty good game. I mean, no knock against him, but he always run draws on third down, which I do not understand. So Kevin Drake was a quarterback, and I mean, he was just on that day, and he went, he's an athlete, and he ended up playing receiver for the league. But Kevin Drake, for some reason, it started to click that those last couple of games. I know we started out 0-5, man. We had a very rough start. We lost to Alabama State, and no knock against Alabama State, but they beat us in Legion Field, and they didn't have half the talent we had. And I just think that we started the game off too run heavy, because Watson Brown was a run first guy. And we went from being a pass first for those first inaugural years to a run team, and we didn't have the personnel. I mean, those linemen weren't used to run blocking. So that would put us in a hole. And then we finally started to gain some traction, and then we ran into a hot Southwest Louisiana team down there with Jake DeLone, and they lit us up down there. And he played pretty good in the National Football League. I think he got the Panthers to the Super Bowl. And that receiver, Stokely, I think his name was Brandon Stokely, he ended up playing for Peyton Manning's coach team for all those years. So, I mean, we ran into some bad breaks. And like I said, the change from a pass first into a run, it took some time. So it took them a while to get it going. So
your senior season is really when you took off. Derek Ingram had graduated in 1994, and you'd become the go-to guy. In your senior year, you had a big kick return game against Southwest Louisiana. You had 145 return yards in that game. You had a 2-touchdown receiving game against North Texas. You had 23 punt returns total for the year for 312 yards. Both of those rank in the top 5 in school history. You had two big punt return touchdowns in the season, one against Charleston Southern for 68 yards and one against Wofford for 77 yards. And that's a record for the most punt return touchdowns in the season at UAB. And you were also a Football Gazette honorable mention All-American. So what was it like to see all of your hard work and patience really pay off in such a big way?
Man, I'm gonna have to say that was a great strategy, bringing in John Neal and letting John Neal run that special team. A lot of people don't know John Neal. He went out to Oregon for a couple of years, but Coach Neal came back, and what he did was he had several types of return. He had some middle, right, and left, but depending on the way they kicked, we knew who to block. We had UAB got some of the smartest athletes, just because, it's the school, the academic school. I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, and then you combine that with talented football players, not the biggest, because UAB we didn't have no weight room. We didn't have no practice facilities. We didn't have no nutrition table. We didn't have any of those things. We were just playing with just raw talent. And you look at all those big returns and me breaking all those returns. Most of it was design, but I gotta give it up to John Neal. That guy was he just knew how to set up the walls, the different types of call. And then we got a couple of breaks, like UAB defense with Robert Leslie, they gave me the field position. So when you kicking the ball from at your end zone, it put a lot of pressure on them to hold their blocks longer. So that's that right there. I could kind of fair catch one or two and just kind of gauge the speed of the punt team. And then if they let up for 1 or 2 seconds, hey man, I'm not fair catching that. I'm running that back. So it was all by design. We calculated on, and they gave me the leeway. I know a couple of times they told me not to return, and I did anyway. But I kind of felt bad. I fumbled twice at UAB. So I mean, I fumbled one in Troy. I fumbled both in Troy. So I mean, I felt bad those 2 times, and then I felt bad off a kickoff return. I fumbled against Troy, which I should have went another way, but I cut back into a blocker. So
gotcha.
It happened.
So your senior season, you also mentioned him a minute ago, but it was your first year under head coach Watson Brown. What was it like playing for Coach Brown overall? And you mentioned his coaching style was a little different than Coach Hilyer's, but what was your impression on the coaching style, and what was your first impression really of Coach Watson Brown?
Well, he was a quarterback guy first, so I thought maybe he would be understanding. You know, he played at Vanderbilt. He beat Bama one year, 13-10, and his offensive style that he brought to UAB that first year was option quarterback. And I was like, okay, I'm a preseason All-American receiver. I don't want to hit no option quarterback. I just want to give me about 5 good catches or 5 good targets, and I can make the rest work. So I had to tone down my ego some, but at the same time, you know, I'm always a team guy, because if I don't get the ball, somebody gonna get blocked, or I'm gonna get a chance to lay a block. So I felt like if I were to get him to see that, you know, on 3rd and long, we don't have to run draws all the time. I mean, you don't have to try to get it all back. There's out routes, curls. I mean, those routes are pretty hard to defend, and one miss from a quick guy, you gonna get a first down. So I mean, you got to mix it up, and I think that would help us in that North Texas game. You know, he had to learn. He had to learn the curve, man. I mean, he's a good ambassador. Like the guy's phenomenal. But like I said, his coaching style he's a run quarterback option type guy, and you saw what he did over the years with his quarterbacks. But then he had that cannon with Hackman. You had to let that guy go, man. Let him throw it. So I love his style, but it just wasn't a receiver offense, so to speak. It's more of a, I don't know if it's option pass or what it was, because he changed all his years. I mean, I think he coached about 10 or 12 years, but bless that brother. But I like I said, I like to have the ball at least 5 targets, you know, just about it, you know.
All right. So what is one game that, you know, it isn't in the record books that you remember very well, and it could be a good or a bad memory?
Well, a lot of times we talk about how good we are, but I had one bad game that I know it wasn't really my fault. I had a broke finger. I had a broke finger from Southwest Louisiana, and the guy, you know, jumped on the pile late, and I had the ball. I was getting up, and he jumped on my back. Finger broke. Went over to the sideline. I said, "Finger broke." He said, "Let me see it." So I showed him to him. It was dislocated. We pulled it back, put it back in place, and I taped it up. And that whole year, I played with that finger, but I couldn't feel it for like 2 or 3 weeks because it was just nothing there. It was like the tendons and all that was gone. And that was that Western Kentucky game. And I dropped like 50 passes. And I know people on TV were like looking like, man, who is this dude here? We got to bench him. But it wasn't my fault. I was playing with a broke finger. So, I mean, that was the worstest game. Everybody knows, is that Western Kentucky game up there in Western Kentucky? And I mean, the ball was perfectly thrown. Hit me in the chest, hit me in the hands. I just dropped it because I couldn't feel it. So I had to ask the Blazer Nation to say, forgive me for that game.
Well, I think that's definitely a valid excuse. That's terrible. But so 5 years after your time at UAB, it was announced the Birmingham Steeldogs were starting, and you played for the Steeldogs from 2000 to 2003, and you played alongside several former teammates at UAB. What made you come back to football, and what was it like playing for the Steeldogs?
I had a great time playing with the Steel Dog. It was a lot of work. I mean, because I actually had a full-time job. I mean, and Bobby Humphrey, man, that brother was. I mean, he was everything he was cracked up to be, because you got one Bobby Humphrey here, and then you got another Bobby Humphrey here. And Dr. Hilyer was like, he's like, Cedrick, would you like to try arena ball? Like, I said, man, I'm 26 years old. I said, I don't know if I want to play no more football, but we were winning a bunch of flag football championships in Lawson State over there on the west side of Birmingham, and they had a flag football league over there, and there was a bunch of UAB guys that played with me at UAB, and we would just go there and just whoop them off. We beat them off. We go up to Atlanta, beat those guys up, go down to Miami, beat those guys up. We playing all around the nation, and when that arena football team came in, and I was like, I don't know if I want to play it. And then he was like, Doc, he was like, you could try it. I was like, man, I don't know. And when I met Bobby Humphrey and I saw how he turned his life over to Christianity and stuff like that, it was a no-brainer. And he had a good staff. He had his name Chris Good, and he had Chris Williams, and he had another guy down there. I forgot his name, but Billy Green. Yeah, Billy Green. He was the equipment manager for Alabama. And we had a couple of good owners. The last one was real good, Scott Myers. He's at Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. And man, I think that second year and that third year, we tore them up. We went to the championship, the game before the championship, and then we went to the game, the divisional game before the championship. We had that game going up in Richmond. And all those UAB guys that came out there, we had that thing rolling, man. Those other guys, other colleges, I know Auburn, Alabama sells, but man, them UAB guys, man, we had that thing powered. We powered that thing. So kudos to the Steel Dogs, because if those arena teams would have had a little bit more support, I think they'd have been more functional, because we didn't make a whole lot of money, but the exposure. We had a couple guys that made it up. Went to Canada and I think 2 or 3 went to the NFL for a couple teams, but it was a good chance. It was a good time for Birmingham too, because that arena we were selling 10,000 average, I think 10,000 average. So that's what it takes to have a successful arena team. So we like I said, we did that first year we went 8-8. Second year we went 12-4. I think third year we went like 13-5, and then that fourth year I think we went like 7-9. So we did a lot of winning. I did a lot of backflips. So a lot of people know me by backflips, because I was the first to come and do those backflips. I did them at UAB, and Doc here, he kind of blessed me out, told me don't do that in the game no more. So but yeah, it's all good, man. I love it. I love the arena.
So I see you post all the time about UAB, and you follow the Blazers very closely, I know. And but who has been your favorite Blazer athlete that you've seen over the years as a fan?
Well, what I do is I go to the games, I watch the players, and every year I categorize which player was my favorite player. And for example, I go back to 14. I can say the offensive lineman, Hayden Newman, he was my favorite player. He wasn't the best offensive lineman. The best offensive lineman was Cameron Blankenship. So I look at what that athlete has, what he don't have, and how he performed every week. Whether he's healthy, does he, come back at the end of the game, fourth quarter? Does he stay strong? Does he, does he look like he checked in or checked out? I look at those things, and so what I do is I'm not the old guy that bash the players. I just look at the players that I like, and whoever I like, when I see on Saturday, I'll be like, look, I like that guy, So, and I see him, sometimes I see him in public. I'll be like, look, TD Marshall, I like your game. This person right here, I like, I tell them, I said, look, man, I like your game. I like the way you play. And it ain't a knock on the other players. It's just that certain players, I look at stuff that looks like Division I or professional play, and I see that play and I like it. I tell them, I said, look, I like your play, and kind of give them good kudos. So,
all right, I like that answer. So, do you still talk or hang out with any of your former teammates? I think I've seen a few of your posts here and there, but who all do you still hang out with?
well, I hang out with all my age group, like the 90s babies. I hang out with all those guys. And what I try to tell those guys is when y'all get a chance, come back to Birmingham and bring your family and let's show them what we was doing back then. I mean, because the best thing about your livelihood is to say, here's my kids, these my kids, because all my kids see my guys, and I be like, look, those kids see my kids, and they see how we act, and we same people. We just older. I mean, we still silly, we still like to laugh and all that, but when it come down to working, there's no time to play, because work is work. That's what it is. So I try to come back and I see I try to get the older guys to come speak to the younger guys when they see them, and just tell them, say, hey man, just shake a hand, or say, what's good, blood? Or, just I mean, don't be all sit over in the corner like a wallflower and look at them, like they fell out of the sky. I mean, they may not know who you are, but you can at least say hey to them, and then finally one of these days they might see your picture somewhere, or you might see, see someone on the wall, and they're like, yeah, I remember that old head. I remember that old guy. So it's pretty funny, man, because when I was young, it was weird having old people talk to me, Now I see why, that because it's kind of goofy, but it's some good stuff, man.
Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast, was I wanted to, have the younger generation, give them a chance to talk to some of the older players, some of the players that were around in the old days, I guess, and just kind of give the old heads, like you said, give them a chance to share some of their stories. So, but I've been a friend follower of yours on social media for a little while now, like I said, and I see you posting photos of you cooking something all the time. What's your go-to meal to cook or grill?
Well, okay, so you gotta know your audience. So if you're a pork guy, you can't bring pork to, say, a person that don't eat pork. So you got to have a beef. And there's so many ways to cook different kind of foods. I watch a lot of barbecue pit masters. I don't watch none of the in-house cooking shows because I think that's sort of critique. I like people to actually try to tame fire and harness that over time, because a lot of people get out on the barbecue grill and they'll burn it up, or they'll cook it too quick. It looks good, but they didn't cook it too quick, and your teeth was about to fall because it's so tough. So you got to kind of look at the way, like 1 week we may come and we'll think of barbecue, and then the next week we might do seafood, and the next week we might do tacos, and then the next week we might do finger foods. So, it just depends on who's coming to the games, because if a lot of people really get out there and look at UAB tailgate, they have some expensive hardware out there. And I ain't talking about, cater stuff. I'm talking about guys coming out there cooking whole hogs, seafood galore. That Nick guy, he's one of those guys. He come out there and make some jalapeno cornbread, make you slap your mama. So it's a bunch of the guys that do good food, like I said. But my specialty is the smoker. That's just my go-to guy. When I want to smoke something, it may be beef, it may be pork, it may be because I've learned now that you can actually smoke a burger. Like you can actually smoke a good burger. And man, there's nothing more American than a good burger and a good beer. I mean, if you can't love those two things, man, you don't like candy. So bless their heart, man. So that's about it.
So how is life now, and what are you up to these days?
Man, I just, I work for the college over here for HBCU called Morehouse College.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had several jobs. I mean, because my field, I have not stopped working. I work boilers. I work on gas. I work on water. I'm a master plumber in Georgia, and I'm a master plumber in Alabama. The reason why I got both is because if the market shifts, I can go to either or. I'm not going to stay and try to, figure this thing out. I'm just going to let the market dictate on where I go. So it's just good to meet a lot of different plumbers and see some of the different tradesmen, like the electrician, the refrigeration guys, and seeing their craft around my craft. And then the beautiful thing about it is I don't even tell them that, I went to college, because what it does is it kind of makes you a little snarky around tradesmen. Tradesmen are different kind of people. They're not like regular people. They're real petite. They do things a certain way. And one thing they don't like is a college guy, what I'm saying, telling them how to do some plumbing or how to do some wiring, or they don't like that. But, because they feel like they learned the trade over 20 some plus years, they feel like they know it back and forth, and they pretty much know more than the manufacturer. So I just kind of, laugh at their jokes and, do my work and, get my pay and pretty much go home, and that's about it.
Okay. A couple more questions for you here. I got a couple questions from Dueling Dragon on Blazer Talk. He knew you pretty well. He had a lot of questions for you, but I'm going to do a couple of them. He asked, former players like himself took a very vocal stance in bringing the program back and supporting it all the way to now. Why was it so important to him?
Yeah, that I was sitting there one day and I forgot. I think it was it's on that east side, and I was over there watching one of those band members, and I was looking at that band member, and that band member was so in tune to that instrument that day. And this was years before the program was shut down. And that kind of like set in my mind. I can't never forget that. And so when I found out that UAB wanted to disband the football team, I was, calling all the people that is in Auburn. I called one of the city council members at Auburn. And one thing about Auburn people is Auburn people don't like Alabama people. So they ain't got nothing against UAB, but they don't like Alabama people. So I just asked some questions, and I asked them, they are in support of a UAB football? And of course they said yes, they would be, but they didn't want to make a quote unquote, I forgot what they call that. Anyway, they didn't want to bother with that. But what they did told me was, we hear you, Cedrick. We thank you, Cedrick. And I just felt like if there was somebody that could help UAB, it would be somebody who played at UAB. So I felt like going to all the little different, I think I went to Montgomery once. I think I went to City Hall another time or twice. A lot of people don't know I worked in City Hall. So from being in City Hall and knowing the people in City Hall at Birmingham, they love UAB. I kid you not. At the time, I think it was the mayor was William Bell. He was there. He loves UAB. Plus, I know Barbara Humphrey. Barbara Humphrey loves UAB. And she's married to, guess who? Bobby Humphrey. So put two and two together. I just think that it would be beneficial for UAB to have its own destiny designed for UAB, and I felt like if we could help them, we could help them. And then at the same time, it was. I think when they asked about how much money it took to raise, I think I got in trouble at home because I didn't know what they wanted, and they just tell me what a number. But I did donate to them, and I didn't expect for them to think that it was, they owe me anything, because they gave me the opportunity to come down there and play. And the people that at UAB, they was really sincere. I'm talking about Doc Hilyer, the cafeteria, some of the professors, that was sincere. I mean, I knew that because I've been in a lot of places. I've been in a lot of states, and I've lived in different places, and they actually do want you to succeed. I mean, especially for the ones that like working and things of that nature. So I felt like I owe that to UAB. I mean, I don't think that I would be sitting here in the position that I am if people that didn't help me at UAB, that I could help somebody else, even if it was, bowling or rifling or whatever the case may be. So, or the band. I mean, it gives them an opportunity to at least be their own person of conscience. And then when they get a chance, they can maybe go back and help UAB. I mean, that kind of what one village does to another village. So it don't make a difference where you come from. It just make a difference on what you do where you get there, because we may be in one place and then you may end up in another place, but you still can contribute, whether you in Georgia or New Hampshire or California. Like, we have former football players that come all the way from California to come to UAB games. They buy season tickets to come to UAB games. And I think it's probably because of the passion that some of the former players still have for UAB. And like myself, I'm just a fan. I don't go to the games and say, I play football at UAB. I just go there and like watching the kids play the game, because they play based on what the city and what the coach stands for. So that right there is in itself so unique. I've never seen that before. I thought Clemson kind of honed that before. I think they kind of touched on that, but I think Clemson is more kind of getting away from Clemson. So, but UAB right now is they got it locked, man. I mean, they got it figured out. I mean, we may lose a game or two, but for what they got and what they done been through and how they superseded in 3 years or 4 years, it's just been breathtaking. So, I mean, it's just a fresh breath of fresh air. So kudos to that team down there and the teams that come through there.
And his other question is, how did he learn to backflip, and would he do it again today, risking a penalty?
Man, let me tell you, that backflip thing I was taught watching, I forgot, years ago, there was a Mountain Dew commercial, a Sprite, one of those commercials. And we was doing that back when we was like 8, 9, or 10. I've been doing backflips off houses since I was about 9 or 10. I mean, literally, I'll go up to the top of a house, get on the edge and flip off. And it was just something, and, my mom and dad, they didn't stop. They was like, we can't watch you 24/7. If you fall off a house and break a leg, we just got to cart you under the car and get you fixed, because that's just the way we growed up. But yeah, I went to this place about a month ago called Sky Zone over in Roswell. I took my daughter up there, and they got these trampolines, and you could jump and do backflips and dunk basketballs. It's a big trampoline park, and trust me, I did the backflip, but I don't want to do the more backflips. Yeah, leave that young people, man.
And my last question I got for you here, it's a lighthearted question I ask all my guests. If you were given 3 wishes by a genie today, what would you wish for? And you can't wish for more wishes.
Well, you know what? I think that I would want to wish for my mom back. That would be my first wish. All right. My second wish probably would be a Ferrari or a Corvette. And my third wish probably would be unlimited barbecue grills of choices. I can swap them out every year or two and just, do my thing outside. That would probably be my 3.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Cedrick, man, thank you very much for being on. I loved hearing some of your stories, and I'd love to have some more guys from your era on. I know a lot of the Blazer faithful that have been around for a long time. Certainly love seeing you guys again. So thank you again, and go Blazers.
You too, man. Thank you so much.
All right. I want to thank Cedrick for sharing his time and reliving some great moments in UAB history and sharing some of his fun personality with us. Cedrick is one of the best UAB football alums that I've had the pleasure of talking to that are really still involved in the football program. And I really think that's awesome to see the generations of football players stick around and show just how far this program has come. But so thanks again, Cedrick. I do have a few quick birthday shout outs here and what I will consider the This Week in Blazer History segment. These birthdays are from April 26th through May 7th, since I won't be having an episode released next week. The first birthday that I'd like to honor is the late Michael Charles. Michael Charles was one of the very first really great men's basketball players, and a lot of the Blazer faithful that have been around for a long time certainly know Michael Charles. He was a great basketball player. He was born on April 26th, and he would have been 55 this year. The second birthday that I'd like to give a shout out to is Mike Davis Jr. He is celebrating his 36th birthday this year. He is on April 27th. So happy birthday to Mike Davis Jr. Marvette McDonald is celebrating his 38th birthday this year on April 30th. Josh Zahn, former UAB football kicker, he is celebrating his 30th birthday on May 2nd. Rob Eason, his 39th birthday, former UAB men's basketball coach. He's celebrating his 39th birthday on May 3rd. Reginald Turner, former men's basketball great. He is celebrating his 54th birthday this year on May 3rd. Chad Jones played for the men's basketball program for the Blazers from 1993 to 1997. He's celebrating his 57th birthday this year on May 3rd. Kelton Brackett, former football player. He is celebrating his 27th birthday this year on May 4th. And Mario Wright, another former football player. He's celebrating his 32nd birthday on May the 6th. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Dragon's Den. Be sure to follow my social pages at Dragon's Den EFEL on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm going to be doing some fun stuff here on my social pages pretty soon, so make sure you're following. That's it for episode 19. Good night, and go Blazers.